Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Breeze. Breezeway Productions The Breeze. We bring you the latest in independent films and film festival news, and we continue our coverage of this year's Cinequest Film Festival, the 2023 edition, with the film Brothers Broken, the story that stopped the music.
I love you. I love you. I love you. Yes, I do. I love you. I love you.
Once again, gentlemen, if I may, could we introduce you individually and then we'll do a little talking?
Okay, Geoff.
Welcome to this evening's event.
There's no such thing as disconnection.
You know the consequences of that. You know what'll happen with the kid.
The guy went totally psycho.
It's hotter than getting out of a physical prison.
I was concerned for his health.
I'm not going to ever see you again before you die.
You can't erase me from your life.
We have Robbie Levin and Geoff Levin. How are you guys?
Good.
Wonderful.
Ready for movies.
Movies are great, and that they're awesome that they're being celebrated in the indie format. So first, I'll kick it off, and then would love to hear what Brothers Broken is about.
Go ahead, Geoff.
Basically, it's a history of Robbie and I. What makes it interesting, I think, is that it's part rock doc and it's part cult doc. So rock cult doc. And it's a different take on this particular cult, Scientology. Nobody else, I think, has talked about how this particular quasi-religion interrupted not only a family, but a band of brothers in a rock band that was doing very well, successful, and it changed our whole lives. What can I say?
Well, you could say that it was definitely a huge magnitude of a story to start, because you have so much history playing in the band, starting the band, the breaking up of the band. How did you know where to start it off and how to begin? You know, did you begin with your childhood? Did you talk about like what got you into music? Tell me a little bit about the aesthetics of putting this doc together.
It's chronological. It started out basically with our burrs in San Jose, California, and goes through the brief history of Geoff and I growing up together, how it was in our school days and our preschool days, and then we get into our music starting when we were both young teenagers, and how the music segued from folk, bluegrass into rock and roll with the advent of the Beatles and the folk scene going into rock, and then how we developed as a band and how we started recording with Capitol Records as teenagers, and how we had our first hit record, and then after our record started becoming a huge hit, that's when we got into Scientology, and then we get into the effects of Scientology on the whole music scene with us.
Did you land in Scientology when you got to Los Angeles and started playing around there? Is that where you first discovered it, or where did you first discover Scientology?
I discovered it. I was, New Riders of the Purple Sage, David Nelson. He's a local, good friend of Jerry Garcia's, and he played with Jerry Garcia in the 60s, early 60s. Mm-hmm. And so I was into bluegrass. Robbie was into bluegrass, but I got in a professional bluegrass band with David Nelson, Herb Peterson, and Butch Waller. And I was playing around, and David was my mentor. Like, he was older than me, more accomplished. And one day he turned me on to pot. I admit it.
It's fine.
And well, it's legal now, but it's completely illegal then, and it wasn't even on the radar for most people. They didn't even think about it, or if they did, it was Reefer Madness. That was the only thing they knew.
Sure.
Anyway, so he turned me on, him and a guy named Rick Melrose, who was a professional Scientologist. This is 1963. Turned me on to it. And they turned me on to pot at the same time, and I was into it.
Interesting. Okay. So Robbie, tell me about you. When Geoff came to you with this concept, what did you think about it when it came to Scientology?
But Geoff kind of put it on the back burner in the early 60s, and we all got reintroduced to it in 1968, at the very beginning of 1968. So the band was playing along fine. We had already released I Love You, and it was starting to move on grassroots movement on some localized areas of the country. And right at that point, actually the keyboard player went to the local Scientology center in San Jose. And to answer your question, it was San Jose, not Los Angeles, where we were introduced to Scientology. So there was there was a Scientology mission, not a big organization, but what they call a mission, which was kind of a satellite Scientology center. And that's where we got introduced. And we all went into, the four out of the 6 band members went in together. And we all started at the same time in Santa Clara.
How did you know how much rock and roll to put in the documentary and how much Scientology to put in the documentary so it was balanced? As you were talking about, it's not your usual rockumentary or your Scientology documentary. How did you do the chemistry or the recipe to make it as you have?
Well, I don't think it's completely balanced. I think I was just talking with my publicist about it. I'd say maybe there's just the history, which is probably 15%. And then the rock stuff is maybe 35. And I think Scientology is 45 to 50% of it. So, because the conflict and the just how dramatically it affected us as brothers. But there's stuff about Robbie's company, which was highly successful, and then there's a little bit about me as a film composer and TV composer. So it covers our history, which is, you would call it neutral, I guess. And then we got all the music stuff. And
it was cool music.
So there's some fun music. I think our reunion was fun for all of us.
Well, you're talking to a very big Fish fan. I've seen them more times than I can count, and I've seen Dead & Co. I really wish that I could have seen Jerry Garcia. I've been to Garcia's in Port Chester, which is a really nice venue, but I always like the music of that time. So the soundtrack in this is also filled with all of your music that you guys played and performed. So, when people think of Scientology documentaries or documentaries that involve Scientology, like Going Clear or My Scientology Story, when audiences watch Brothers Broken, what do you hope that they can take away from the documentary after they've seen it?
There's an element of Scientology that has been covered in the other documentaries, as far as how they are very successful in breaking up families. Our particular instance was probably the extreme side of that. I was in Scientology actively for 4 years. Geoff was active for 46 years. And when I left in the early days, I didn't leave quietly. I made a lot of noise, and as I quit the church, they said, "You can't quit. We're kicking you out." And they wrote what's called a suppressive person order on me, which is anybody that's overtly antagonistic to Scientology will have one of these orders written on them. And when that order is written on you, if you have family in Scientology, they have one choice, which is either disconnect from you completely, or they get kicked out of the church. Well, that's 2 choices. So Geoff chose to stay in the church, and we didn't talk for 28 years. Geoff and I didn't talk because he couldn't talk to me. So that aspect perpetuated a lot of drama and a lot of emotion. and it caused Geoff a lot of problems. And the movie goes into the depth of of darkness that Geoff had to go through, having to disconnect from me, and it's a bit of a dark side to the documentary, but it goes into depth that these other documentaries don't go into, because they're covering the whole subject of Scientology. And what we're really covering in the film is how Scientology affected our brotherhood. So a little different.
I have to ask, after that revelation, Geoff, if you were in it for so long, how did you get out? If you don't mind sharing, if it's too intense of a question, you don't have.
Not at all. My therapist publicized it on every social media thing, so it's fine. I'm joking. But no, it was 28 years of separation. There was a brief interlude where we did the San Jose Rocks, Dan Orloff's San Jose Rocks. We were awarded Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for San Jose, which means that we had to get back together. That means myself and Albert Ribisi, the other Scientologists in the band, we had to work out how are we going to do this. So Robbie obliged by seeing the problem himself and going, okay, I'm going to step up to the plate and act like I'm rejoining Scientology. I'll do whatever I have to do it. So he started doing that, which cost him time, money, etc., to prove to them that we were allowed to be around him. Okay. So anyway,
in other words, I ran a con. Rather than the church running a con on everybody, I ran a con on the church, and they fell for it.
On the con artists, crisscross, back and forth, a 1-2, quick thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, to continue on, that was really tough the second time I had to disconnect from Robbie, because he did it for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in San Jose. After that point, he wasn't going to continue, because it was something he did for us so we could get together. There's no way he was going to rejoin that group. So that was the start of a heavy duty depression for me the second time. And then that escalated into a 3-year situation where I dropped out of life completely. And I was a successful composer and had a successful band or performance art band called Celestial Navigations with the actor Jeffrey Lewis. And then all of a sudden I was gone. But I couldn't deal with life anymore. It was just too much.
Well, I'm glad to see that you're still around and making documentaries, and I hope that you've pulled out of that depression, because I know that depression can be an extremely hard battle to fight, along with the rest of life's battles. I've been through that dark time, and I'm sure that both of you have as well, with such a cloudy or stormy past as was documented in Brothers Broken. But I'm glad that you were able to talk about it and to shed some light on this subject. It is very mainstream and continues to be, where there are more documentaries, news stories that are breaking about the church every day. In closing, where can people go to see this film at Cinequest? Do you have some screenings coming up?
We have a screening on the August 20th at 4:30 at the Hammer Theater in San Jose. And then if people, the first 50 people that come, or 50 people or couples or whatever groups, we're going to give away our CD for those early people, and our new CD. And then, and hopefully we will have time after to say hello to people after the screening. And then the second screening is in Mountain View on August 26th, and this is at 11:45 a.m.
Nice.
So an early showing at the Showplace Icon Theater, which is, from what I heard, is a really nice place.
Wonderful. I'm glad you get a chance to go down there, and giving people some of your music to check out is awesome. Rock and roll in the 60s has a really great vibe, and I enjoyed listening to it when I watched the film. And I think that the story was amazing. You know, when I got the pitch, I read it and I was intrigued, and I think it's good that people are coming out and blowing the whistle on subjects like this, so that the public can be aware of what goes on behind closed doors. Yeah, before we close, is there anything else that you'd like to remark about Brothers Broken?
Well, it's a universal story. That's how I think of it. It's about family and how powerful that is. And I didn't really learn about that until I got out of the cult.
It's dark with a good ending.
That's good. I mean, I like watching stories that have a happy ending or a hopeful ending. So if you can go through the storm of what happened with your lives and your music and your careers, and you come out with some sunshine at the end, then I think people would leave with a smile on their face or some hope in their hearts. So I want to thank you for taking the time, Robbie Levin and Geoff Levin, to talk about Brothers Broken.
Thank you.